All right, so we're going to dive into the report here. This is coming from WCCF Tech. The title reads, PlayStation 5 Pro specifications are being shared with third-party publishers. Give me 1 second to move this. This is a rumor. So they say here, Sony recently started sharing information on the PlayStation 5 Pro specifications with third-party publishers, judging from a recent report from a well-known insider. Speaking during the latest episode of the Sacred Symbols podcast, host and known insider Colin Moriarty said that he was explicitly told by one of his contacts at a mid-sized third-party publisher that the company has been informed regarding the console's specs. Unsurprisingly, first and second-party developers already have access to the PS5 Pro details, according to Colin Moriarty. Give me 1 sec. Boss, if you keep doing this, where'd they go? What'd you do with the snacks? Here. Sorry about that. Fine. I'm just going to have to give him some. We're not at 25 members, but in case you guys can't tell, I'm going to have to sort this out. To be honest with you guys, I'm going to have to sort out what we're going to do with Boss because he's getting involved way too early. Come here. There you go. So I don't know if we're going to hit 25 members today, but I'll just give him the snacks now in good faith that we do. All right, let me go back to this article here. The PlayStation 5 Pro While information regarding the PS5 Pro specifications being in the hands of multiple studios and publishers has been, circulated, there's a good chance we will hear more about the consoles soon enough. I don't know why it says consoles there, officially or otherwise. According to rumors, the console will be marketed as a 4K 120 FPS machine, which will be easily achieved thanks to AI upscaling in the vein of NVIDIA's DLSS. Performance improvements are also expected to require little work from the developers. The PlayStation 5 Pro has yet to be officially announced, although there seems to be a wide consensus within the gaming industry regarding a late 2024 release. We will keep you updated on all of the news and information, so obviously I will keep you guys in the loop there. And so, yeah, this is beginning to escalate. It's so interesting when we talk about the PS5 Pro because there are so many people that I still see that I won't say don't believe it, but just at this point, it's not a matter of belief. I think a lot of people didn't think the PS5 Pro was going to be a thing. It's pretty clear by now that it is going to be a thing. Now, people are basically saying, well, listen, is it going to be worth it, right? Like, is it actually going to be a meaningful upgrade? But we heard that first-party studios gained access to the PS5 Pro dev kits. First-party studios are usually the ones that gain access to stuff like this first and foremost. In fact, it's safe to say that Sony's first-party studios have likely been working with the PS5 Pro for a little bit now, and then not too long after that, usually a couple months after that, the third-party developers get access to the PS5 Pro or the Pro console, the dev kits, that is. And then now we are, I guess, hearing that publishers are beginning to, I'm assuming like it's not just about the specifications, right? If you think about the presentation that Sony's going to give third-party publishers, it's not just about, okay, hold on 1 second, guys. Boss, I gave you what you wanted, man. Please leave me be. I'm trying to do my stream. You're messing up my camera. Why you do this to me, man? I'm just trying to report about the PS5 Pro. Oh my God. I love you, boss, but holy shit, I just gave you so many snacks. Is it not enough? Is it never enough for you? He needs a Pro upgrade for his snacks. More! Just as some of us feel we need more out of the PS5, power-wise. We need more power. Boss needs more treats. He needs a Pro upgrade. He's looking thick from this angle. It's all those damn snacks. Anyway, I would have to assume that based off of this report that's coming from Colin Moriarty, he says that, hey, he heard from a third-party developer that, there was basically a presentation that Sony did on the PS5 Pro. I think this is not only Sony divulging the specifications to publishers, but more of a marketing beat type thing. You know what I mean? Now that we are getting further into 2024, we're going to continue to hear more and more about the PS5 Pro. And one of the things that we are beginning to hear a little bit more about is how Sony is apparently going to market this console. As the article stated, they're going to market it as a 4K 120 FPS machine. And it seems, based off of other rumors we've heard, that ray tracing is going to play a significant part of this marketing as well. I would assume that when Sony's giving this presentation, they're also focusing very heavily on the marketing of the console itself and basically just kind of presenting this new hardware to the development teams, the third-party development teams, that is, as well as the third-party publishers, in a relatively similar manner that they would the consumer. Not as aggressively, of course, but just basically telling them, like, hey, guys, this is a big thing we're working on. This is a big thing we're going to be pushing, and we want you to be on board with it. It's something that is going to be releasing at the end of this year. And so I also want to go over some of the leaked specifications. Now, these leaked specs came out back in December. It says the details of GPU configuration vary depending on the source. Kepler, who was the first to name the custom APU as Viola, which is apparently the name of the APU that the PS5 Pro, the custom APU that the PS5 Pro is going to use. He now claims that the SoC offers 60 compute units out of 64 available. This means that the GPU has 3,840 stream processors, the same configuration used by Navi 32 based RX 7800 XT desktop GPUs. It's worth noting that this information is contrary to what a separate reset error leaker claims. The reset error leaker, when previously leaking these specifications, claimed that there would be 56 compute units available in the GPU. More recently, it seems that other rumors are circulating that seem to be also indicating that we are looking at about 60 compute units inside of the PS5 Pro GPU. And that's fascinating because when you think about it, the current PlayStation 5 model, if I'm not mistaken, has 36 active compute units. I think it has a total of like 40 compute units, but like 4 of them are purposely deactivated due to yields and whatnot. And so we're looking at basically what is somewhat close to a doubling of that. There's going to be 64 total compute units to be available in the PS5 Pro GPU. 4 of them are going to be deactivated, which will leave us with 60 compute units. So it sounds like we're going to get a lot more performance out of the PlayStation 5 Pro's GPU. This does remind me of the PS4 Pro because when you think about the PS4 Pro, what did Sony really try to sell people on? It was the GPU, essentially. They said, hey, you're going to get 4K. We're going to really lean into that. Of course, it's still going to be at 30 FPS, but that's really what we're going to lean into. And what made that possible is the significant bump that we saw in the GPU of the PS4 Pro. So with that being said, the other specifications here, the code name of the project, again, is Project Trinity. That is pretty interesting to think because if I'm not mistaken, the original project name for the PS4 Pro was Project Neo, if I'm remembering correctly. So Sony seemingly going with like this kind of Matrix theme here. And I think the project name for PSVR was like Project Morpheus or something. So pretty cool that they're kind of going with those Matrix names there. But the CPU is going to be an 8-core AMD Zen 2 clocked at 4.4 gigahertz. So that is worth noting where we're not seeing a significant change in the CPU. To be honest, there was never going to be a significant change in the CPU. That would definitely alter the Pro model too much, where it would require too much, I think, development time to have to try to like utilize that. It would screw everything up, basically. You could end up seeing developers creating a PS5 Pro version of a game that they suddenly would have trouble getting running on the base model PS5 if they were to dramatically change the CPU's performance. That's based off of my understanding anyway. So that's why they're keeping the CPU pretty much the same. So that way it just makes it much more easily scalable, minimal work for the developers to get the most out of it. It says here that it will apparently be RDNA 3. I think when it comes to the ray tracing, though, the rumor is that the ray tracing is going to be like RDNA 3.5 or potentially RDNA 4. It says here, while the PS5 APU utilized a blend of RDNA 1/2 architectures, the upcoming PS5 Pro is expected to transition to a hybrid of RDNA 3/4. The primary graphics will be RDNA 3 based with enhancements in ray tracing, drawing from the RDNA 4 architecture. Notably, dedicated ray tracing hardware will handle BVH traversal for ray tracing acceleration instead of shaders. The gaming console is reported to boast 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory connected to a 256-bit memory bus, resulting in 576 gigabytes per second bandwidth. The GPU clock is rumored to be 2 gigahertz, equating to a single precision compute power of 28.67 T-flops, thanks to AMD RDNA 3 dual issue design. So there we go. Once again, PS5 Pro, 28 T-flops confirmed. I don't know that that's exactly what that means, but some of this stuff gets a little too technical for me. But it also concludes here by saying the announcement date, supposedly for the PS5 Pro, is going to be September 2024, with the release being holiday 2024. So that makes sense. It seems like Sony wants to keep the announcement very close to the actual release of the PS5 Pro. Makes me wonder if it's going to come in the form of a showcase. We do know that Sony does like to hold their showcases in September, but we've seen Sony do showcases like last year in May. So who knows? Maybe this is a 2 showcase kind of year. Considering the PS5 Pro is coming, that would make sense. We have a super chat here from King Sam, or a couple of super chats, I should say. So thank you for that, King Sam. You're saying, I beat Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League story. Really enjoyed it, assuming it's later revealed the Justice League isn't really dead. I thought the story was pretty good. Went into the game with the assumption in mind, and so it wasn't bothered by how the characters were handled. Great cutscenes, good humor, solid gameplay. And then you say here, jumping back in when there's more story added. Major issues like infinite loading, which lose you progress when restarting, and other bugs bring it down. Well, that's unfortunate to hear, but it is also good, though, to hear that you did enjoy the story. So you're telling me in a game called Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, they actually kill the Justice League? Whoa. Major spoilers there, bro. Come on. No, I'm just kidding, of course. But I appreciate you getting back to me on that, King Sam. I did ask you when you beat the game to let me know your kind of final thoughts on it. And I do wonder if it's going to get more story content or not. I don't know if that's something they confirmed. I do have an extra bonus article here that we're going to go over a little bit later on that kind of, I guess, talks a little bit about what's going on with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. And it's I just will say this before I continue my conversation about the PS5 Pro. I think no matter what, for me personally, I just won't be able to get over the fact that we got like the greatest Batman trilogy in video games ever that catapulted Rocksteady to just an upper echelon development team, one of the best in the world. And when they concluded that, they spent almost a decade making a game like this. Again, I'm not trying to dump on it or anything, but it's just, I don't know, man. You really got to wonder, like, why they chose to go in this direction, right? Like, was it really Rocksteady's choice to try to position this game as a live service? I don't know. All I do know is that I hope Rocksteady does something pretty different when they move on to whatever their next project's going to be. I hope that they kind of just stick to single player, I just feel like that would have been the best move for them to make. But either way, King Sam, thank you again for getting back to me, and thank you so much for the super chats, man. Getting back to the PlayStation 5 Pro conversation, let me just make sure I'm not missing anything here. So, yeah, basically what this equates to, based off of my understanding, because, people who aren't into the whole technical side of it, I'm not really into the technical side of it. The question is, all right, what is the PS5 Pro going to do differently than the base model PS5? Well, based off of what we're seeing here, it seems pretty clear that if you upgrade to the PS5 Pro, what you're going to get is not a native 4K resolution, as in it's not going to be running games natively in 4K. That just simply requires too much at 60 FPS. You're going to be getting a new upscaling technique that is going to be patented by, I assume, Mark Cerny. They'll probably have some kind of name for it, but it'll basically be Sony's equivalent of DLSS. And you're going to get what will be, at least perceived by you, a native 4K image, and it will be running at 60 FPS. But there is going to be much better ray tracing on the PS5 Pro alongside this native 4K image, or what will look like a native 4K image at 60 FPS, than what we saw on the PS5. Ray tracing on the PS5, I think, has been pretty decent so far, but you can tell that it's just a trade-off, right? Like, you have to run the game at 1080p at 60 to get any type of ray tracing, and even then, it's usually minimally implemented. And this is something that I imagine Sony's going to want to push pretty aggressively, because we saw how aggressively they really kind of pushed ray tracing with the launch of the PS5. And I think they did it successfully. Insomniac specifically, I think they did a really good job kind of showcasing, like, hey, look at what we can do with this ray tracing stuff, right? Pretty cool, huh? And yeah, people are like, whoa, that's impressive. But then it just kind of, I don't know, faded into the background, because the fixation, was just basically on, but is the game going to be 60 FPS? And if it is going to be 60 FPS, what's the image quality going to look like? And even right now with a game like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, again, looking at Digital Foundry's analysis, it's clear that the PS5 is struggling a little bit, where, yes, it can run the game in a performance mode at 60 FPS, but there are some frame drops, and the image quality is just not that great. Now, we could say maybe that's down to optimization, but I'm at this point beginning to think it's less about the optimization and more so about the fact that some developers are just, run with their game engines, they're just running into a couple of problems here where it's like, all right, in order to get this game running at 60 FPS, this is just what it's going to have to look like. And for a lot of people, that doesn't matter. For a lot of people, they don't care about the game looking a little bit blurry. They don't care about the game, lacking a native 4K image or even 1440p. They're pretty okay with even it just being 1080p. But I would say there's also this demand out there, at least this is what I've noticed, where it's like, or not even a demand, but more of an expectation where it's like, I don't know. I feel like, I bought a PS5. If I'm going to get this game running in a performance mode at 60 FPS, I expect it to look a little bit better than this. Now, we have seen with Sony's internal studios, I think about a game like God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West. I think it's pretty clear that the studios that are working, most closely, I guess you could say, with the PS5 exclusively, they are clearly able to do some really special things with it. And this is relatively normal because that's kind of their specialty, right? We've seen most PlayStation studios, if not all PlayStation studios, do this with the hardware every generation. But I think what the PS5 Pro will essentially enable is the first-party studios to be able to really dial things up to a dramatic degree, where it's like, okay, if this is how good Spider-Man 2, for example, can look on the base PS5, what is Wolverine going to look like on a PS5 Pro ramped up, right? Or maybe potentially Spider-Man 3 at some point. If this is how good Horizon Forbidden West can look in performance mode on a base model PS5, how insane is it going to look? How much further is Guerrilla going to be able to take it on a Pro model for the PS5? So I think there's definitely going to be that side of it where it's like we're going to see, as we always do, PlayStation studios just dial things up to 11. But when it comes to third-party studios, even partner studios, again, like we see with Square, or partner publishers like with Square with FF7 Rebirth, I think the Pro is going to make it much easier for these third-party studios to maybe not necessarily get their games dialed up to 11 on the Pro model, but if we look at their games being, sticking with this metaphor, dialed up to, say, 7 or 8, right, on the base model PS5, then the Pro will allow them to get to 9 or 10, if that makes sense. That's how I'm kind of viewing it, and that's why I'm totally okay with the idea of a PS5 Pro. I know that there are still people who have this attitude where it's like, why would I buy this? This is pointless. And I get it, but I think everybody just has to understand that, like, you don't have to buy it. You know what I mean? The PS5 Pro is going to be targeting a specific audience, a specific market. And if you're somebody who the first thought that pops into your mind when you think of the PS5 Pro is, well, that seems useless. Why would I buy that? It's not for you. You know what I mean? Like, if you're totally fine with the PS5 as it is and you feel no desire to upgrade, you're good. Now, when it comes to the concern, because there's always going to be this concern, well, if Sony brings out a PS5 Pro, does that mean they're going to neglect the base model PS5? Does that mean games on the base model PS5 are going to start to suffer? No, that's not what that means. Because the truth is, the way this is going to work is developers are going to target the base model PS5 first. They're going to optimize their game for the base model PS5, squeeze everything out of it that they can, and then they're going to work on the Pro version. And once they move that game over to the Pro, they'll be able again to, oh, we were able to dial this up to 6. Now we're able to dial it up to 8. Or if we were able to dial this game up to 7, now we're able to dial it up to 9. That's essentially how it's going to work. And so, kind of brings us to the next part of this conversation, which is how much is this Pro model going to cost? This is a conversation we've had many times, and we will continue to have this conversation until it's officially announced. I do have a poll up in the chat that you can vote on right now. What will the price of the PS5 Pro be? $500, $600, $700, $800, or more? Well, I'm not going to read those results yet. I'm going to wait till the end of the stream so we can get as many votes in there as possible. But my opinion on this is it will be a $600 machine digitally. That's the key point here. Digitally. You will not be able to get a $600 PS5 Pro model with a disk drive. There will be a disk drive available to purchase, or there will even be a disk drive model that you can purchase, but that version will be $700. Just like the way we see it now with the PS5, right? If you want a digital PS5, it's $400. Or sorry, it's $450. And if you want the standalone hard drive, well, actually, it's funny because it doesn't work as simply as I thought it did. I forgot that the price of the digital PS5 model was increased to $450. So if you want a digital PS5, it's $450. If you want the not the hard drive, the disk drive separately, I think it's about $80. So it's pretty close to $100. But I think we're going to see a similar situation with the PS5 Pro. The question I have is this: is Sony going to develop 2 separate SKUs of the PS5 Pro like they are with the base model PS5? You get what I'm saying? Like, are we going to see a PS5 Pro that has the same marketing? Like, it's basically just a direct reflection of the PS5 marketing, where here's a screenshot of, or I don't know if you call it a screenshot, but just a kind of marketing shot of the PS5 Pro, and there's 2 models side by side, one with the disc drive, one without. I'm thinking that's the way Sony's going to have to do it. I think that would make the most sense. And so what we'll basically end up seeing is 4 different versions of the PS5 you can purchase. 2 digital models, base PS5, PS5 Pro, 2 disc drive models, base PS5, PS5 Pro. But I think the base price point, or you know what? Hold on. We could see. Now, let me ask you this. There's a question I have for you guys. Do you think we could see a situation where the digital PS5 is $450? So is it possible that the digital version of the PS5 Pro could be $550 instead of $600? I'm not so sure that I'm confident in that, because it sounds like the PS5 Pro is going to offer quite a performance boost. It seems like it's going to be a relatively significant performance boost, double the power, or at least double the compute units for the GPU, essentially. So I'm not so sure that I would expect it to be, the starting price $550. That would be pretty impressive. You're saying let's not do halves. I would like to not do halves, but Sony has forced me to do halves. We have Yggdrasil. Hopefully I said your name correctly. You're saying, MBG, thank you for your streams. You have made my love for gaming come back. It was starting to fade, but your streams have helped me so much. Well, you're welcome, man. That's actually awesome to hear. I would have never known if you didn't share that with me, man. So I'm really happy to hear that your love for gaming is coming back. I like to think it's definitely not just me, but this community as well. I'm sure this community is a big part of why maybe your love for gaming is starting to come back. So I don't want to take all that credit, certainly not. But I appreciate you sharing that with me, man. And I hope you continue to enjoy the streams, because I certainly enjoy hosting them here. So shout out to you for that, man. And thank you for the super. We also have Josh Z here with a $10 super chat saying, MBG, please explain to me why a higher FPS has become such an obsession. I have no concept of the difference between 30 and 60 and feel like an idiot because I don't care about this new norm. Yeah, no, you're not the only one, Josh. I have seen people talk about, 30 FPS versus 60 FPS, and some people saying that, hey, like, I don't really see much of a difference. Now, here's what I will say is there is certainly a difference between 30 FPS and 60 FPS. Now, it's not my place to tell an individual whether or not you can see that difference. That's not my place. I can only speak for myself when I say that it is double the frames. And because of that, when I am playing a game at 60 FPS, I do see that and I feel that. I think more importantly, I feel the difference more than I see the difference, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I do understand how deceptive a solid 30 FPS can be. And I say this because, see, that's the thing. Somebody in the chat, you're saying 30 is choppy. See, 30 is choppy after you see 60. That's the thing. Once you see the higher frame rate, And maybe like Josh, I don't know if this applies to you. Maybe this doesn't apply to everybody, but for me, when I see the higher frame rate and then I go back down, I see the choppiness. But I do notice that when my eyes adjust, so for example, if I play a game at 60 FPS for an hour, and then after that hour's up, I drop it back down to 30. For the next like 45 minutes or so, I will see that choppiness. I can't unsee it during that time. But at some point, it's like something in my brain just kind of switches, like the gears switch over, where now I'm not really noticing the choppiness as much. My eyes have adjusted. I guess maybe my brain is just kind of filling in the blanks, the 30 empty frames, I guess, or whatever, however you want to view it. And I've seen this happen like multiple times, or this has happened to me multiple times. And so I think people get a little bit dramatic about 30 frames, if I'm being completely honest. And I say this as somebody who does prefer 60 frames per second. That's the way a lot of these conversations go, to be honest. People get very extreme about it. Like, I could never play a game in 1080p again. It's like, you sure? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not ideal, but is it like that unbearable? Realistically, it's probably like, no, it's still bearable. Like it's still doable. But I think what people really mean to say is like, I don't want to go back. I think that's really what it is once you experience that higher frame rate and you feel it and see the difference, for most people, again, I'm not speaking for everybody, but for most people, it seems like you just don't really want to go back. Because once you go back, all you're thinking about is, I know this would feel better at a higher frame rate. And I think the same applies to 1080p resolution, at least for me. Maybe resolution's a little bit different though. Resolution might be a little bit different because resolution, I think, does have more to do with your actual eyesight in the sense of like, if you have poor eyesight, a higher resolution does, like, you can still see the difference, but I think people who have worse vision have a harder time seeing those differences with the resolutions. I think people with good eyesight, or if you're wearing glasses, of course, basically if you have 20/20 vision, whether that's naturally or by wearing prescription glasses or contacts, I think you can more easily see the difference between, oh yeah, that's a native 4K image and that's a 1080p image. And it's like purely a visual thing, right? It's like, man, that looks so sharp versus that looks a little bit blurrier. Whereas I feel like with frames, it obviously starts with the eyes, where it's like you can see the difference. For example, when you drop from 60 to 30, you will see more choppiness that seemingly wasn't there previously. But I think the reason why it becomes so noticeable for some people is because the nature of how you're interacting with video games. It's why you don't see people saying, man, I can't watch movies at 24 frames or 30 frames or whatever. You don't see people like freaking out when it's like, oh, the movie isn't at 60 FPS. I don't want anything to do with it. It's just different. When you're interacting with a video game, especially fast-paced video games, a game like Helldivers 2, for example, fast-paced shooter, camera spinning all over, having that higher frame rate just makes it easier for your brain to process everything that's going on. Like literally, it makes it easier for your brain to process it because your brain is being given more information. That's what's so fascinating about frame rate, is your brain is being fed more information. 30 extra frames are being fed into your brain. And that's why some people say, like, I can't play shooters at 30 FPS, or I perform significantly worse in shooters at 30 FPS, because your brain is literally being fed half the frames, and that's why I said your brain adjusts to it and it fills in the blanks. You play a 30 FPS game long enough, I'm telling you, you're like, this is fine, because your brain has to adjust to it. Boss, don't make me keep talking about my brain here, okay? Okay, Josh? Don't make me keep talking about my brain in frames. But I don't know, man. It's different for everybody. That's what it comes down to. Everybody has their own feelings on 30 FPS, 60 FPS, 1080p resolution, 4K resolution, 1440p resolution. And so when I said a moment ago that I think people are a little bit too harsh on 30 FPS, I do mean that. I think some people make it seem like that like games are unplayable at 30 FPS, and like that's not true. Like there are many games that are absolutely playable and enjoyable at 30 FPS. But if you don't have to play them at 30 FPS, then I can understand why you're like, you know what? I don't want to. It's too big of a difference for me. I see that difference. So I don't know if that helped you or not, Josh. I mean, you're saying here, can I explain to you why there's this obsession? Again, to put it as simply as I can, I just think for most people, once you go 60 FPS, it's very difficult to go back. It's very difficult to go back for a lot of people. So hopefully that helps. So Josh, thank you for that, buddy. We have Idrisil again saying it's like how an audiophile will prefer a certain set of speakers. The PS5 Pro might be for some and standard for others. Yeah, that's another good way of viewing it too, like with audiophiles and people who, once you engross yourself with premium sounds, right? Like just premium sound quality. Well, it's like once you get used to having a certain pair of headphones that you use all the time to listen to music, especially music, but to, play games, or if you're watching something and you're wearing this premium, really nice pair of headphones that just, you hear everything. And then if you go from that to something that's like half the price or half the quality, the person who used that premium set of headphones, like, you will absolutely notice the difference. And it will take time for you to basically forget the premium sound, like hearing everything. You'll have to forget and just get adjusted to this lower quality sound and just say, all right, yeah, I guess this is fine now. But yeah, man, it's just the way it is with all these things. It's once you experience something that would be considered better, higher quality, in most cases, it's very difficult for people to regress and go back. Hold on, I think okay, never mind. I thought he was gonna want to leave. So Yidrisel, I appreciate that, buddy. We also have the Zombie Fanatic saying, thinking I should get a job to save up for the PS5 Pro. Yeah, well, that's the thing, man. It's definitely going to be a premium product. Make no mistake about that. I did see people maybe wondering, will the base model PS5 get a price cut potentially? And we could end up seeing the PS5 Pro come in at the $500 price point. I highly, highly doubt that will happen. Sony seems to have made it pretty clear to their shareholders that they do not plan to cut the price of the console anytime soon, or maybe even at all. In fact, we could see Sony go this entire generation without dropping the price of the PS5 and it just kind of sticking to that $500 price point. So I would not anticipate the PS5 Pro launching at the current price of the PS5. Yeah, see, like you're saying the basic PS5 will be $350. Not a chance. Not a chance, unfortunately. We're just past those days, when it comes to expecting significant price drops. Will they drop the price eventually? Eventually, maybe. Eventually. But from my understanding, Sony is now making a little profit off of each PS5 sold. And so considering Sony's biggest issue right now when it comes to the PlayStation division is shrinking profit margins, yeah, I highly doubt that they're going to take one of the only things that is producing a bit of profit for them and remove that. You know what I mean? We have Legions GG. Thank you for the super chat, buddy, saying 30 FPS equals Grandma's old Skoda. 60 FPS equals Grandpa's Firebird. There you go. There you go. That's one way of putting it, Legions. I can still play games at 30 FPS. Okay. But I don't know, man. It's the feel of it. And I think it depends on the game as well. Truthfully, I think the faster paced the game is, like, the more you move the camera around in the game, because I feel like it's different for every game. Some games, you're constantly moving the camera very quickly, very rapidly. It's all over the place. A lot of games require fast reflexes and reaction times. Other games, not so much. I think when you're playing a game that doesn't require as much precise reaction, or the camera movement isn't as intense and all over the place and as snappy, I think 30 FPS can be okay. But any game that is requiring that, I think 30 FPS can be certainly difficult to not necessarily adjust to, but it can be difficult to really kind of, I guess, perform your best, right? Especially because most of the games I'm describing that ask that of you, they're usually, there's some type of skill involved to a certain degree anyway. But yeah, there is just one final thing I want to say here about the PS5 Pro before I move on to the next set of topics. And it has to do with how many games can we expect realistically to support the PS5 Pro, right? Are we going to see, because this is something I haven't seen talked about as much, are we going to see developers support the PS5 Pro as strongly as they supported the PS4 Pro? Well, I think it might depend on how much excitement in general there is for the PS5 Pro. I think it will depend on sales. I think no matter what, we will get very strong support from Sony themselves. So from their own studios, from first party, from partner games. Like, I do suspect we will see a PS5 Pro patch for Final Fantasy 16, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, obviously first party exclusives like God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2, so on and so forth. But when it comes to the third party support, what will that look like? Well, I think what Sony will try to do, and I think they'll be able to, because I think it'll be a solid marketing point alongside new games just to get more attention and maybe potentially sell better on PS5. I think Sony's going to try to court a certain amount of developers to, like, say, hey, do you want to be part of our September showcase where we reveal the PS5 Pro? If you are one of the first third-party developers with your AAA game to optimize for this console, we would like to have you in our show. So I think Sony will kind of have that marketing advantage to where, let's just face it, guys. Regardless of how much negativity there might be out there for a PS5 Pro, there are absolutely many people who are excited for it. The people who are excited for a new piece of hardware, a new console, they're going to show up. They're going to be excited. They're going to express that excitement. And frankly, I don't think any amount of negativity or concern is going to stop that. I think that's been proven over time. And so I think Sony knows this. I think Sony's going to lean into that. And I think that these third-party developers, or these third-party publishers, I should say, are also going to lean into that. And I think basically what this will culminate in is whenever we do see the PS5 Pro, I think we will see a pretty healthy amount of support. We also do have to remember that Mark Cerny is the one that is putting together the PS5 Pro. I'm assuming he'll be the one that will reveal it, talk about it, give us all the details, give us his philosophical viewpoint, which we always love to hear about from Mark Cerny. He'll give us his philosophical viewpoint on what went into creating this machine. But one of the things that we know Mark Cerny cares very much about, because he is a game developer, is making it as easy as possible to develop for. And I think if there's anything that will ensure that the PS5 Pro will have very solid support from third parties, it's that right there. Ensuring that, hey, absolute minimal effort required to get the most out of this Pro machine. That'll be good for us, obviously, anybody who's buying the PS5 Pro, but it'll also be very good for the developers, so they don't have to stress about it and feel like, oh man, we got to worry about this thing now, you know? So I think it could be a good combo here. I think Sony learned a lot. I think it's clear that Sony, over the course of 5 console generations, they've learned a lot about really making sure that we focus on the development side, right? We listen to the developers. We make this thing easy to develop for. It's gotten easier and easier with each generation. I mean, the PS3 obviously was a nightmare for developers. Sony learned their mistake with that. They brought out the PS4. The PS4 was a super easy console to develop for. Night and day difference between the PS3 and the PS4. PS5, they doubled down on that. They made the PS5 even easier to develop for. I think the PS5 Pro will fall right in line there.